Hello and welcome to the Tom and Joe Show. I'm Joe.
I'm Tom, out of order, bizarrely.
Out of order, yes. Which explains the show we're going to talk about to a T.
Mm.
We are talking about Mamoru Oshii finally being the craziest man you have ever seen in your life. And just uh
Yeah, it's
I,
Mamoru time again, guys. Remember when we did Skycrawlers? Mamoru is
yeah,
back.
Mamoru Oshii is back, the most unhappy man in the world. Doesn't look like any bit of happiness escapes him except when he pets, a basset hound.
No. Or,
Uh,
or choose out
so,
Hideki
somehow,
Anno and Co.
somehow, Vladlove happened, where he unleashes 40 years of unbridled silliness.
In a 12-episode anime that was obviously... So, let's start at the beginning. Who is Mamoru Joe?
Mamoru Oshii, you know him as the director of Ghost in the Shell, the movie that made Ghost in the Shell a popular thing.
The 1995
super,
one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great animation. Scripting is a little too much replacing dialogue for philosophical topics for my taste, but not as bad as the second movie where he outright replaces 95% of the dialogue with Bible quotes, philosophical quotes, whatever he can get away with.
I mean, it's not as bad as Standalone Complex in that regard, but it's still like, this is way too much philosophy. God. So, Mamoru Oshii is kind of, I guess, was part of sort of the older guard of anime. He came to sort of prominence in the sort of the mid to late 80s. He did one of the films for Urusei Yatsura. He did the first OVA ever, Dallos. Yeah.
I've watched Dallos. It's definitely early Mamoru Oshii before he had his style and writing down. It is. You can watch it as a curiosity, but it is not great, and the music is terrible.
Yeah, it's like it is very peak 80s. He then did Angel's Egg, which is obviously a hell of a film, which is basically character designs by Yoshitaka Amano and produced by Toshio Suzuki, who is obviously now the mastermind behind Studio Ghibli. Then he went on to direct Part Labor, and obviously on to Ghost in the Shell, various other things. He's gone into, actually, obviously we mentioned Hideki Anno very briefly earlier. He went into making live action films, but he's also responsible as a writer for a series called the Kerboros saga, which is sort of a alternative reality science fiction series, probably best known through the series Jinro the Wolf Brigade, which is sort of a summary film of that. And yeah, he is the grumpiest man in anime. He is genuinely...
The only time I've ever seen him smile is when the people who made the Skycrawlers game had him play it, and like he got to fly around and shoot down a guy, and then he starts smiling. He is a huge military otaku, as you will see. Like he does not have any love for political stuff, military stuff, but he sure as hell loves the military equipment. But definitely the grumpiest. But of all the things, you have to go back about 35, 40 years to go to Urusei Yatsura to get something that fits with what he's doing. Pat Labor has some comedy, but once you get to his movies, like the second Pat Labor movie is, widely considered one of his great movies, and it has some of that character stuff, but it is definitely a transfer over to modern Oshii, who is more philosophical and more about the politics and all of that fun stuff. But this, I mean, not to say that it isn't there, but this is Mamoru Oshii has too much information in his brain. His brain will explode if he cannot get all of this information out of his brain. how the hell is he going to do this?
This is the answer.
He does it by making a 12-episode, completely madcap, 100% silly, 100% doesn't make sense anime series about a girl who is a blood donation addict but can't donate blood because she has chimeric blood, which is it switches between A, B, O, all of that. So she can't donate because otherwise she'll hurt people. So she just happens to have a vampire fall into her lap. My Vlad Transylvania, and that is her actual name. My Vlad Transylvania.
Yep.
And, she's a vampire, so, the blood donation addict is Mitsugu Banba, who constantly gets called Bom Bom by one of the supporting characters. Yeah. And it's there's a lot here, but
so
Mitsugu it's essentially a lesbian love relationship between a blood donation addict and a vampire, but obviously Mitsugu cannot give her let her suck blood, otherwise she becomes a vampire, and there's only so much blood she has to give. So they have to make a blood donation club with the school nurse, Chihiro Chimitsuru, voiced by Romy Park.
All hail.
In one of the most Romy Park roles I can ever imagine.
Yeah, this role was made for Romy Park. It is just extraordinary. So,
but it is. That is the basics. I mean, that is the outline, and that is only a clothesline for Oshii to just unload his brain with as much information as possible. And, he is the chief director and the writer on the show. There's another director, Junji Nishimura, who has been around a whole lot with Oshii since Urusei Yatsura.
Yep.
And he has done a hell of a lot, good and bad.
Including, for some reason, in the most bizarre sort of credit I can possibly think of. This guy directed both seasons of seminal Boys Love Down the Toilet anime Kyo Karamao. Yeah.
Which is also an isekai.
Yes.
Before it was isekai, it was...
Before isekais was every other anime series.
Yeah. But it was before that. It was...
Oh, Christ, I've just spotted what he directed. He was one of the directors for Neo Yokio. Oh shit! Oh god.
Yep. So he's one of the old guard. So he is wildly up and down. So, the one I noticed was Glass Lip, which is one of the worst series I have ever seen. And it feels bad to say it because it's such a low key. It's by PA. And, PA is usually good, solid, reliable. This series is just crap.
We will inevitably get to
it lets you know it's crap from the get-go.
Yeah. So...
in the things we work with.
Yeah. In the music corner, by the way...
he is... sorry.
In the music corner, by the way, is Oshii's composer of choice, Kenji Kawai. The guy who did the soundtrack to Ghost in the Shell, pretty much every Oshii film. What appears to be the entire Ring series, and every other really big soundtrack, including, guess what? He did the soundtrack for Skycrawlers and Eden of the East. So, hello again, Kenji Kawai. Good to see you again, mate.
He is an excellent composer. I'm glad to see he got to have fun here. There's definitely a Kenji Kawai sound in some of it where there's I don't know how to describe it, but there's just a low-key I don't want to say hum, but there's just a mood, and it's downbeat, and it's there's something important going on, but it's very low-key, and stuff like that. But it's but he does actually get fun, and everybody gets to have a lot of fun here. I think Junji Nishimura was just brought on, even though Oshii's the chief director, just to let Oshii know when he needs to stop, or to let the series know when he stopped. because there are a lot of things that are just a stream of consciousness of Mamoru Oshii. There is literally a establishing shot of a location that has a plane flying over, and it'll just linger there as text slowly pops up describing exactly what the plane is, when it was built, what it is used for, and who uses it.
Yeah.
And there's just this long list, and the shot will stay there for 20 seconds while this thing goes around. It has nothing to do with anything. It has nothing plot related. It is just Oshii wanting to geek out for 30 seconds, and you're going to sit here and watch it.
Yeah. What I have to say is that, like, obviously, so a little bit of thing about how this series was released, because anime at the moment is kind of weird. Because obviously, you know, the whole COVID thing. So this was meant to be shown on Japanese telly, and then obviously it's just kind of ended up online, which is a real shame, because this is a hell of a series.
It's really good.
So yeah, I have to admire and take my hat off to Crunchyroll for, like, particularly in this moment, but just throughout this remarkably, like, verbally dense series in which you get all sorts of intertitles and sort of, you know, visual stuff going on, that the subtitling on that sequence is just like, it's a wall text of subtitle, but it's like, yeah, this is what Oshii is geeking about today.
This is what the inside of Oshii's head looks like.
It's a plane.
Given a narrative.
Oh,
I mean,
boy.
it's not much of a narrative.
Yeah.
But there is just enough plot that they can, like, string a bunch of whatever's on his mind. But don't expect, like, a story. There are some story moments, like, they have to. But just to describe it, the opening of the series is a bunch of police, like, surrounding this import crate. And they open it up, and there's just a blonde doll. If you're expecting this to lead to something or to pay off in some way, you're wrong. Oshii just wants to watch the police
do stuff.
Go do stuff.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because he is... I would say he is definitely suspicious of authoritarian stuff, but he likes their equipment.
Oh god, yeah, like literally Jinro and, like, the entire series that Jinro appear is, you know, the Kerboros thing is literally about the military-industrial complex and, you know, this authoritarian crack sort of SWAT team who look amazing. They're, like, really, you know, cool gear, and it's like Oshii balances, I feel, the military otaku with this sort of, like, yeah, but also what are they using all this equipment for thing very well. But at the same time, it's like, this is like a sequence that just, like, it's one of these sequences that's it's visually really clever, and what it does is it starts the series on this question mark that the series then never comes back to. I mean, we see the doll in one of the two OPs for this, because this is the next thing. This is a 12-episode series that somehow has two openings that it swaps back and forth between.
Yeah. One is I don't want to say pretentious, but it's a very artful, like, there's very deep visual meanings, like, like there's Mai and Mitsugu holding each other while they're drowning, and there's the teacher who is carrying the tree, and then she puts the tree in the water, and all the branches grow out, and all the students sit on the branches. It's one of those open, and the song is very classy, and it's very, you know, classic opening. And then you have the second one, which I believe you love a whole lot.
So, boy. Ladies and gentlemen, Love Bites are a band that I know absolutely loved. Love Bites are a Japanese all-female heavy metal band, and I fucking love Japanese heavy metal, and this is the best thing I've seen all year, and I'm a little bit annoyed that nobody has brought this band to my attention before. And it sort of very much captures the two sort of elements of this series. Obviously, the two OPs are called, you know, the Mai and Mitsugi versions of the OPs, like in most things, and it's sort of I suppose it's a very clever way of sort of, you know, going. We have these two main characters, and they are very different personalities, and we also want this like really fast, heavy Japanese heavy metal song because why not? It's and the ending's pretty good as well, which is like this really artsy sort of piece of thing.
Yeah. It's a Kenji Kawai music song. There's somebody else on the vocals, but it's you know, very classic Kenji Kawai, and it all of these would be fine and just work perfectly in a serious show that was not the most insanely goofball comedy you have ever seen.
Yeah, because I feel like the packaging of this is sort of like, it's a little bit disingenuous. It's like, you know, the way this series is presented is sort of very, you know, very dark, very serious, you know, very, you know, moody. Particularly because the first OP we get is actually, you know, the Mitsugi version. It's like this really artsy, you know, slightly, frankly, quite pretentious sort of bit of like animation, and it's like, and then we meet Mitsugi, and Mitsugi is, the
blood donation addict, and
a queer mess.
And it at least eases you into the madcap. I mean, it starts as general comedy and then just gets crazier and just keeps adding and adding.
Yeah.
And then you get the blood donation club, which is which again is more of a stream of consciousness. So we have Chihiro Chimatsuri, who is like she is the older lady. I mean, don't call her an old lady, but she is like, you know, definitely like represents an older audience. And then we have Maki, who is in the film club, who is what Oshii uses to spill his film nerd guts.
Oh boy, and do we ever have film nerdery in this? So yeah, the way that's done is actually really clever. They have these, obviously, you know, and I can only describe them as sort of like cut-ins, where you know cutaways, where it's like, and then you get Nami, who will just sort of talk about Maki, who will just talk about films, and you get these very nicely drawn sort of portraits of, you know, various actors and actresses, and it's like, Oshii, you fucking nerd. I was just watching this, and it's like, but you know, there's this brilliant moment in one of the later episodes where you know, obviously Maki, you know, very much, because like I would almost say this is Oshii's, like, you know, author avatar, bizarrely enough, considering she's a small Japanese girl. But it's like, Christian Slater isn't a very good actor, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, it's just the opening to the last episode. You think it's going to be a finale to something, and it starts off with a huge slam on Christian Slater out of nowhere.
And just interview with a vampire in general. It's like, okay.
Yeah. That's like, this interview with the vampire, I mean, the episode is about getting an interview with Mai to end the episode. And it's just like, we have to put something to, like, imply this thing has a plot, which, I mean, it does enough. But there's a difference between, you know, the plot and what goes on. And what goes on is Maki just goes on in the final episode, and this is like supposed to be the climax. It's not really. There's not a climax. It is just like, it is just an end to this season, maybe another one. But she is talking just on and on about Interview with the Vampire, and it's like, this was a good movie, and I think that the cast was used well, except for Christian Slater, who was cast. Yeah, and he was like good in the name, or the Name of the Rose, and has been lackluster ever since. Like, just okay, Oshii, you're just bodying Christian Slater, which obviously Christian Slater's career has had ups and downs, and there are people who are harder on him than I am, but I guess when you do Alone in the Dark, The Wizard, and you know, all those kinds of movies, you get a reputation.
Yeah, it's just where this series goes in like in between the sort of the major plot points is sort of like fucking Mad Libs, basically. So
yeah,
yeah,
I would like to describe a mainline plot. You can't really do that because it'll go on a path and then just stop when it's interested in something else or has something like it establishes the club, who is made up of like Bamba, Mai, Maki, Chihiro the nurse, Jinko the discipline, Kwaru the cosplay.
Oh yeah,
and then
yeah.
Masumi, who is the buff meat eating guy, who looks buff, but apparently he's got hypertension and extremely high blood pressure.
Yeah,
it's like one of the things. And then Nami, who I forget what club she's in.
Dance, I think it is.
Dance club.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Like there are a lot of characters and there's a lot going on, and it is hard to describe what goes on in the series, and it's hard to, But the point is, it is a madcap comedy, and it is only doing the basic lip service of a plot to just streamline all of these thoughts that Oshii has and all of these madcap situations. And to describe one, there's an episode, I think it was episode 4, where she drinks dragon blood. Now, whatever blood she drinks, she adapts the personality of, there's the type A, type B, type O.
It's a common thing in Japanese society that basically certain types of blood give a certain type of personality. I mean, it's basically...
But which Chihiro says, that's actually complete nonsense. It has nothing to do with your personality. And then it goes on to be true in the series.
And then she turns
immediately disregarding. And then she drinks the special blood, which was dragon's blood, and then turns into a dragon and destroys most of the city.
Yeah.
And then then there's like a newspaper headline which explains why nobody cares about it the next episode. It was just like, oh, they filmed a movie, or they have all the headlines of what happened the previous night, and it's just like it is explained by the most basic bullshit explanation, which only serves to offer why it is not a bigger deal in the next episode when they just move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
That is what this plot is.
And then Thom has horrifying Dragon God ending EA flashbacks as dragons do battles with fighter planes. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's a deliberate reference or not, but there we go.
Well, we definitely know Oshii is a gamer. Like, he has there's a Fallout episode reference in the first episode.
Oh god, multiple Fallout references.
Which is one of the best jokes is when, do you need to donate all of this blood because you need the money to support your boyfriend who is a Fallout player, and they just explain this worthless nerd of a character, and it's like, you need to keep up the money to, get this keep this catch of yours who is a nerdy gamer shut-in.
And it's like, but you're referring to Fallout 4 that's like at this point is like, what, 5 years old? Oshii, are you still stuck on Fallout 4? What's going on, Oshii?
But then in an episode dresses in a Darkstalker's outfit. Tatsiolik's favorite episode ever, I imagine.
Yep.
And then the biggest one of all is all of episode 6.
Yeah, which is called Castlevania. Definitely not a reference to Castlevania. Definitely not sort of copyright. And
they are doing a play adaptation of something called Castlevania, which they acknowledge is whatever they're naming it to avoid copyright. And all they're referencing is all of these characters, you can't hit them with copyright because, they're in the public domain. No copyright.
Someone from Konami.
We can do this.
I mean, it's Konami, so fuck Konami.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, fuck Konami. Anyway, but no, it's just, and this is the thing about this series that I absolutely love. The energy on it is just ridiculous. It will just go through this, and it'll be. So yeah, I don't know where we want to go with this, because it's we could go through every single episode and tell you what happens in this episode, but it's it's one of these things, and we have come across series like this before, haven't we, Joe? Where it's we could tell you what happens, but it's it's the journey, I think, that is very
that defeats the point.
Yeah,
it is very what happens in it and how it happens. Just explain the stylistic stuff. It is a series that appears to have no rules, but it has enough rules that it works as a series, because otherwise just stuff is going to happen and nobody is going to just, it's okay, whatever. But it has enough, which is what the veterans understand, at least.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Because you can't just you can't have rules. There have to be limitations. You have to establish boundaries, and it does. They are very loose, very elastic boundaries that can snap, when the time is right. But they are there. That they have to go along with the plot, even as the plot gets so ridiculous that she turns into a dragon or has a concert where it is obvious she is a vampire who is existing at this person's house, but nobody. Some people care, but there's a newspaper headline. It doesn't matter. Go back to your homes. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, let's go through this. So, there's obviously the first episode in which we are introduced to Mai, and we sort of start getting the club together. Episode 2 sort of goes through the whole sort of what blood does to her. And, the whole concept of, okay, if she drinks this blood, she'll get really depressed. If she drinks this blood, she'll become really hyperactive, so on and so forth. Episode 3 is the aforementioned musical one. Episode 4 is the dragon one. Episode 5 is one of my favourite episodes of this series. Where her father comes. And it's her father is this, you're expecting... your typical sort of really, Gary Oldman in Dracula, sort of villainous figure, and he's just this goof. And it's oh my god, this is and then the best thing in this series, and and this is the moment I thought, okay, this series is going to start being something serious, and actually have a plot. Is when we're introduced to
absolutely not.
And then we're introduced to Mitsuku's father, who is, Van Helsing.
Yeah.
And it's you would expect this to be okay, now we're going to gear up and actually we're going to do a plot, and oh no, it's living under the roof with, this person that your father's, bent on killing, their father. And it's, and it's oh, and then it's just gone. It's okay. That's fine. Yeah. The Castlevania episode.
I should note episode 5 is called Daddy Came.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's an accident.
No. Castlevania is, I think, one of the best episodes of anime I've seen. It's this very much this, and I'm watching the Netflix adaptation of Castlevania, which is great and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But this is this is I fucking love this episode. I don't know why, it's just so earnest in its sort of what it's trying to do, and it's it does it so well, and it's sort of it's Oshii being a complete nerd, and on a reasonable, because it is a really nicely animated. This is the thing, this is not, considering it only ended up on the internet, is not a cheap looking series in any way, shape or form.
No, it does have this style where it intentionally puts in live action with the animation, and they do this early so you can get the blend, and you can feel the style, and they use it extremely well to the point where if you know anything about the series, you've seen the picture where Bamba is holding a gun, but the gun is a real person's hand holding a real gun.
Yeah.
That is the visual gag everybody knows if they, have friends who are into this series.
And that's the thing.
And
but
yeah. This series is all about keeping you off your guard, or getting off guard enough that it strikes you sideways, and then you don't, or not knowing what's coming next. Especially the multiple opens that are both would be a part of an either serious drama or an action vampire show.
Yeah.
But it's a comedy. All of this is about keeping you off balance and not knowing exactly what to expect, but keeping enough elements that it is stylistically consistent, and it is all a part of this show, which is, why only like veterans can really pull off a show like this without it going too far in one direction or another.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the thing. I'm struggling to think of anything to compare this to, because it's so out there in terms of what it... I mean, this is going to sound weird. The nearest thing I can think, although it is a very much a more comedic thing in sort of how it does, is sort of like actually it's like the animation in places does very similar things to Fujiko Mine, and it's like, okay, we're obviously going with this very 70s style. Ironically enough, Junji Nishimura was one of the scriptwriters on Fujiko Mine for episode 8, so it's a really incestuous of the last few things we talked about. But it's sort of it's this very very modern looking art style, but it's sort of it does cut-ins like and it's the thing, when was the last time we saw an anime do that old style of cutting in characters to show close-ups, and it's almost like a anime used to be made 10, 15, 20 years ago. You set up a concept and then it's just wacky hijinks through it, and as I said, it is very much a veterans. It is the sort of style of anime that anime used to be like, when people like Oshii and Nishimura were like in their prime.
And it even plays with that. Like, one of the biggest stylistic things is there are split screens throughout all of the series when people are talking, and it plays with, sometimes the people are in the room talking to each other, and they're like looking at each other. Sometimes the split screens are looking at the person not in the split screen and talking to them through there, and sometimes the person not in the split screen is talking to the people in the split screens and the monitors, and sometimes a split screen will appear over a character, and it's like they have to shove them out of the way. It's like, I'm talking. And it is that kind of old style visual stuff, but having fun with it.
Yeah, that's the thing. The thing is, this series has a lot of fun with itself, and that sort of more experimental sort of half comes really to the fore in episodes 7 and 8, in episodes 8 and 9, which are A Long Story and Bolted. So episode 8 is, what the hell is it? Sort of starts and you sort of go, and it's basically the backstory for Chihiro, and it's like, okay, she has this mysterious glass of blood that is labeled memories, and it's like, okay, why is this got why has she got this glass? And we go into this this is where it starts to hark back to 70s anime in sort of its very that very ornate, very visually style, which obviously things like Fujiko Mine are definitely in. And it's like this bizarre, very cinematically literate, because there's references to like Brief Encounter and Italian neorealism, and it's like, what the fuck is this? What is this?
It is trying to be a flashback to a 70s melodrama series.
Yeah. And
she's obviously romanticizing her past quite a bit, and sometimes they call her on her Chihiro on her bullshit.
Yeah,
it's and it's kind of being comedy like that, but through genuine love of like 70s melodrama and all these anime and movies from the 70s.
And then we have Bolted, and Bolted is okay. This is the thing with Bolted. Like I tend to when we are watching stuff for this episode, I will, because hey, we like talking about stuff before we do it. I was chatting to Joe while watching this episode, and my reaction was basically, "What the fuck is going on?" So Bolted is astonishing. It's basically this recreation of the style in terms of both storytelling and visually of probably the most interesting figure in Japanese comics I have come across, who is a gentleman called Yoshihara Tsuge. Now Yoshihara Tsuge is not very well known in the West. He is essentially an artist who doesn't really do work anymore. He is obviously, as time of recording, still alive. He is essentially the best way I can describe him is basically a Japanese Crumb, or Robert Crumb. He does these very ornate single panel manga series, of which the most famous is Screw Style, so that's why it's called Bolted, because in which this episode pretty much recreates, and Screw Style itself is astonishing. It's this style of manga which is now very old fashioned and sort of very not a thing we see in Japanese comics anymore, called the Gekai and Gekiai. And essentially Gekiai is, whereas obviously common manga is multiple panels on a page, Gekikai, and particularly the work of Tsuge, is sort of this huge single page illustrations of these vignettes, obviously with text. Sort of, as I said, the best thing I can compare it to is Crumb's work, and essentially Bolted recreates the story of Screw Style, in which a boy washes ashore, is attacked by a jellyfish, and goes looking for a doctor. And this is genuinely bizarre. It's it's very, very strange. It is the sort of same vibe you get in Senno Zetsubo Sensei, in this sort of very 1920s 1930s Japan. Screw Style is set in, obviously, just in the aftermath of the Second World War, and this is like even for Oshii, who is a director who was adopted many styles over the years. This is one of the most astonishing things I've seen a anime series try to do. This is something that almost belongs in experimental cinema, the way it's done, and the fact that this is sort of parked on the sort of the opening of the last third of this series, which is this goofy, strange sort of Yuri anime series, is just absolutely bananas.
Yeah, I could say the episode is kind of throwaway as far as like essential episodes. I mean, granted, Oshii doesn't see this as a throwaway. He wants you to know this artist exists and that he loves this artist, to the point where at the end he just like takes mask off, and it's like, instead of being my references are my references, you have to go find them. He literally says this work is an homage to Tsuge Yoshiharu. The dialogue and settings were inspired by Screw Style, Masters of the Gensaken N, Red Flowers, and The Girl of Mocha Ria.
Yeah.
Which he literally will say, okay, this is what I'm referencing. Go read these.
Yeah, and it's a real shame, just to by the by, that for a figure so absolutely fundamental to sort of modern manga, Tsuge is like, there are 3 of his huge, body of work. Only 3 of his strips have ever been translated into English. Which is, for a figure of such absolutely titanic, importance in modern anime and in sort of, particularly experimental comics, is kind of a real shame, frankly. But anyway, back to the...
Although it fits right in with this thing, this feels like an experiment, because it is very much, I mean, as I've said over and over, Oshii is definitely downloading his brain into a series and trying to see if it can fit into a narrative.
Yeah, and it's even experimental in terms of, not only its release, but also it's like... So here's the thing with Japanese animation. Japanese animation is usually, and you'll get this obviously at the beginning of films, it's, the famous line, production committee. And production committees will basically be, a bunch of companies come together and go, we are going to make an anime of, I don't know, in this case, let's say we're going to adapt a manga, or we're going to adapt, something into a film, and you'll get a production committee. And a production committee will basically go back and forth, and it'll be, basically, the long and the short of it, a sort of a financial thing. And this is sponsored by one company called Ichigo Inc., who sort of, are, I suppose, a Japanese sort of Japanese sustainable infrastructure company who have done sort of stuff with Oshii before.
But this is their first anime they produced. I looked up anime Ichigo Animation, and this is the only thing that's under its name.
Yeah, it's like this is it. But this is the start of something experimental. You could go, okay, in this day and age when Netflix and other sort of big multimedia companies, where Amazon and Crunchyroll and Funimation are producing their own series, this is a new and exciting sort of development in anime. You can go now, okay, you do not need to sort of have this sort of 5 or 6 way agreement between all these companies to make a thing where all of them get their slice back of the pie of the profit. It can go, okay, Mamoru, here's 100 million yen, go and make us a thing. Okay, brilliant, there we go. It's a freer system of anime, and it's sort of like, it is, I don't think if this was like, if this had to be released on television, if this had to be, released as a thing, normally, this would ever have taken off in the way it did. It's a remarkable experiment.
Yeah, it is really good. You don't, even watching it, you're like, okay, this is fine. And then you look back and realize, holy shit, that is actually kind of amazing in some ways, especially episodes like Bolt Style.
Yeah.
Or, that they just go for it and, do whatever, how much of it works. Like,
yeah, I mean,
we're just going to reference 70s, shoujo melodrama.
Yeah.
Or we're going to reference this comic artist I really like. Or,
or hell, we're going to have
Yeah. We're just going to do a play of Castlevania because I really like Castlevania, even though I don't have a really good memory. But all of my bad memory is going to be based on Maki saying it's based on the disc version. Because I am a Castlevania nerd, and I like that. I love episode 6, but there are factual errors, like Frankenstein being the first boss of Castlevania, which that is not the case. The first boss of Castlevania is a giant bat. Oshii is a massive nerd like I am, so he could probably understand why I'm, have this nerd rage. So he's like, he gets a lot of mileage out of it's the disc version, and it's like most of us have never played the disc version, so how would we know?
Yeah.
I have hardcore gamers Castlevania 101, so I guess I could look it up.
Yeah.
But other than that, how would I know?
I mean, the other thing is the experimental thing is oh, by the way, Mai and Mitsugi are just a couple in this throughout the entire thing. It's never sort of oh, this is a Yuri series. Oh, they've got to fall in love with. It's no, they're clearly holding hands and they're clearly very gay for each other.
Yeah.
It's like, that's remarkably refreshing that it just goes, okay, episode 1, episode 2. Okay, they're now living together and, doing, obviously, Mitsuki's entire, character arc is basically doing stuff so Mai doesn't have to, go thirsty for blood. And it's like, oh my god, you represented, lesbians really, really well in this. Like, what is going on with this? Why is it Mamoru Oshii that's doing the really good vampire gay anime?
I don't know.
And Oshii.
It's then the other ones that are obviously want that audience to and just bait.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, we will eventually somehow, I feel, because it's like inevitably we'll eventually come to that vampire series.
Okay.
Yes. It's just, this series is like, it's a unique thing. Like, this could only have come out of the mind of somebody who is, who is a massive nerd. And I mean that in the, from the bottom of my heart, in the most, respectful way. Like, Mamoru Oshii is a colossal nerd. He is a colossal fucking military nerd. He is a colossal cinema nerd. And from one, massive, cinema nerd to another, Mr. Oshii, this is a masterpiece. This is genuinely, one of the best series I've seen in, I don't know, I would say...
I haven't watched a new series in a while just because, the only thing I watched was the second season Major Second, which is a baseball anime, and I love baseball anime. And that's my, I don't want to say shame or anything because I'm not ashamed of it. It's just, it's my, what I like.
Yeah.
So, and what I like watching just to watch. But I've been having a hard time, getting into dramatic shows, during lockdown and quarantine because, my emotions get tweaked in odd directions. And this is kind of my first new series back into watching new anime. And thank God this eased me into it because the second season of Megalobox came out. And the second season of Megalobox is depressing. It is hardcore. And I don't want to spoil another series by talking to it when we're not even talking about it as the main. But it is... I am glad I had Vladlove to ease me back into watching new shows.
Yeah.
Because it is, it's about stuff. It's a busy show. Your brain will always be working on it. But at the end of the day, it is a madcap comedy that is just about entertaining you. I think the closest thing I can come to a equivalent is either Project A-ko, which is just the massive action series that is a whole bunch of references and isn't anime silly and all of these cinematic, and that fits, but also Full Metal Panic Fumatsu, which is one of my favorite series, which is it goes the more Looney Tunes route. It is a Looney Tune route about a former child soldier who now has to bodyguard at a school, so he overreacts to everything with violence. So it's kind of a mix between Project A-ko and Full Metal Panic Fumafu. So if you like any of those, you're probably going to like this. And I think it's a really good series. I don't know if I would call it masterpiece. I mean, I will probably watch this again and, probably everything will pop a whole lot more than the first time, even though plenty popped. It's just this is such a busy series. You don't experience it all the first time you watch it.
Yeah. And I think more than other, it's nice from a guy who's who is basically anime's, grumpy old, one of anime's grumpy old. I mean, flipping hell, our favourite Gundam man is still around and being very grumpy about everything because, Tomino is just the grumpiest man ever to live.
Yeah, Tomino is okay, I'm going to make this anime that's going to kill all these things, and then everybody's going to say, oh no, he didn't actually say that or mean that, and now there's everybody, it's okay, I'm taking a screenshot of this quote, so when we have this conversation again 5 years down the line, when his series fails, And he said it was going to be a killer, and it's like, oh, I don't think he was serious. I think he just wanted to do his own thing. It's like, nope, he absolutely did.
Yeah, I mean, Oshii's not Tomino levels of just
no, he's just grumpy, and he is probably of the feeling mankind is doomed, judging by his work and how much he hates, like, how the world is set up, and, like, how much Skycrawlers is a very damning portrait of humanity as people who need conflict as competition, who need suffering as competition for something to watch and to have a side.
And this is the thing, it's nice for this guy who is like the grumpiest man, you know, the guy who is like, you know, the philosopher anime director, who's, you know, oh, everything is very complex, you know, here's a reference to something, which he lampshades himself. It's like, you know, there's like moments in this where he goes, oh, this is a quote from such and such, and it's like, Mamoru, what are you doing, mate? But it's nice for him to sort of, you know, to make something like this, to make something,
and to make fun of himself too, because he is obviously in on the joke, especially when there are his stream of consciousness, like the dub of the Japanese dub of Gone with the Wind, or you know, his long-winded things where they either just let him go for a ridiculous amount of time, or they put an edit in the middle. So I'm glad. That's probably why there's a second person. It's like, okay, we're gonna do this. Here's an idea of what we're gonna do, and he goes along with it. So I mean, he obviously has a sense of humor. I mean, it hasn't been clear in his work for 4 decades since Beautiful Dreamer. But, like Urusei Yatsura, Beautiful Dreamer is probably his closest thing to this. Although it's one of the seminal anime titles. What I do want you to know is these people are supposed to be idiots. That's why they are having a Third Reich party at the start of Urusei Yatsura, Beautiful Dreamers, because they are goddamn idiots.
Yeah.
So, which is always a weird thing, because everybody will always point, okay, here's the anime you need to watch, you know, to catch up or be an anime fan. That pops up on there, but then in the first 5 minutes, it's like, they're hosting a Nazi-themed party. This is, I'm uncomfortable now, but these people are idiots. They're goddamn idiots. That is why they are doing this, and they are supposed to be, so...
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, it's nice for Oshii to... It's not Oshii embracing his inner idiot. It's Oshii just making something politely for Mamoru Oshii. And that this originates like from a fucking phone game he made in 2013, because this is the bad thing. Like, Mai is originally from a phone game. A phone game he made in 2013. It's like Mamoru Oshii made a phone game with lesbian vampires. It's like, this guy is like is a lot wackier and a lot more out there than I think he himself or, you know, we ever give him credit for. And to see this, you know, in a series where Oshii can just, you know, do what he wants is astonishingly liberating.
Yeah.
And I predict within about a year or so, we are going to go, Mamoru Oshii, this is another long philosophical series about you complaining about the military-industrial complex. Please go back to making gay vampires.
I don't know. The thing is, it is open for a second season. I imagine it's open to go as long as it wants to. But I don't know if I want to. I think if, at best, 2 or 3 seasons, and then they wrap up would be... Yeah. I don't want it to get like, you know, Urusei Yatsura that went on forever. Yeah. Or, you know, something like that. This feels like it would be a good novelty, and the second season would pop up, and it's like, oh, what a pleasant surprise. And then the third season wraps it up, and it's like, oh, okay, that was a nice ending. Yeah. That would be my ideal trajectory for this series. But if it just stayed this, I'd be perfect. It's got legs, but if it stayed just like this, I think I'd be perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Joe, what are we doing next time? Because...
Well, we were supposed to do your anime selection, but we're still working on that, but we have a Patreon request.
Yes, we do, from our other Patreon, because we have Patreons, because, hey, we'll talk about Patreon in a minute. We are talking about, for our other Patreon episode, this is going to be a fun one. We are talking about the Kingdom Hearts Orchestral World of Trez CD.
Okay, I'm just going to tell you this. You know how Oshii has opinions about Christian Slater? I have opinions about Kingdom Hearts, and somebody's paying me to talk about Kingdom Hearts, so yes. We're going to get that. I apologize. I am normally a pleasant person with Kingdom Hearts fans. Obviously, I do a show with a huge Kingdom Hearts fan. Hi. But we have to, if we're going to talk about Kingdom Hearts, we have to talk about my opinions.
Yes, but we also need to talk about, obviously this being a CD which was released, to obviously promote and to go alongside a classical music tour, which I went and saw with the person who has actually recommended this episode, who's requested this. Hi, Shelley. This is going to be one of these episodes where we get into the nitty gritty of are video game classical music actually real classical music, and all that elitist bullshit. Boy, yeah. This is going to be a problem.
Just remember, at the end of it, we are still friends.
We are indeed. And then we'll be back to normality, and finally talking about a Haru X machine gun, because when did we do this? I think we were gonna do our Haru
2 months ago.
2 months ago, but
2 to 3 months ago.
But for some reason the DVDs. So before we go, obviously the usual information. If you, like our good friends, good friends who have obviously requested things on Patreon before. If you would like to, support us on Patreon and get an episode done for us, we can be found on patreon.com/The Thom and Joe Show. The Thom is spelt with a H, so it is THOM. It is THETHOMAND Joe Show. We can also be found on Twitter at Not So Final Prod. So, yes, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we have been Thom and Joe. See you next time.
See you next time.